Somewhere in America right now, a 26-year-old just signed a 30-year mortgage. Their parents are proud. Their friends are jealous. Their Instagram caption says adulting. In 10 years, there's a real chance they'll regret it. Not because owning a home is bad, but because nobody sat them down and showed them the math. Today, I'm going to show you the numbers, the hidden costs realtors won't mention on the tour, and the framework people who actually build wealth use to answer the question that will shape the next 30 years of your financial life. Should you rent or should you buy? Stay until the end. The final number I'm going to show you might change how you see this decision completely. Renting is throwing money away. Buying is an investment. You've heard it from your parents, your uncle at Thanksgiving, that one coworker who won't stop talking about his equity. It sounds true. In a lot of cases, it isn't. Home ownership, as the smart move for everyone, was built in a different economy, Hinky. When a house cost 2 to 3 times your annual income, mortgage rates were low, and people stayed in one job, one home for decades. That world doesn't exist anymore. Quick question. When's the last time you met someone under 30 who stayed at the same job for 10 years? Exactly. So why are we still making 30-year decisions like it's 1985? Today, the average U.S. home price sits well above $400,000, and mortgage rates have spent the last couple of years in the high 6 to 7% range, some of the highest levels in 2 decades. Here's what most people never calculate. Buying a home means paying property taxes every year, forever. Homeowners insurance, which has been climbing fast in many states. Maintenance, a common rule of thumb, is around 1% of your home's value every year. Closing costs when you buy and again when you sell. And realtor commissions that can eat 5 to 6% of your home's value the moment you decide to move. Add it up, and a $400,000 home rarely costs you $400,000. Once you factor in interest, taxes, insurance, and upkeep over 10 years, it can often add up to significantly more, sometimes close to double, depending on your market and loan terms. And in the early years of a mortgage, most of each payment isn't building your equity, it's paying interest. You could be writing a check every month for years and barely own more of your own house than the day you signed. So is renting the smarter move instead? Not so fast. Renting has its own myth to bust too. If you rent, you're throwing money away, right? When you pay rent, that money is gone. But the money you pour into a mortgage's interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance is gone too. It doesn't come back to you either. One payment is just labeled rent and feels wasteful, and the other is labeled mortgage and feels responsible. The real question isn't rent versus buy, it's what are you doing with the money you're not spending on a down payment? A typical down payment today lands somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on the market. That's a life-changing amount of capital. Invest that, plus the monthly gap between rent and what a mortgage payment would have been, into a diversified index fund, and you're not wasting anything. You're building a second engine of wealth that most homeowners never consider. Let's make this real. Jake and Sarah are the same age, same income, same starting point. Jake buys a $400,000 home with a $60,000 down payment. Sarah rents a comparable place and invests that same $60,000 plus the monthly difference between her rent and what Jake's mortgage payment would cost into a low-cost index fund. I know what you're thinking. Jake gets a house at the end. Sarah has a spreadsheet. Stay with me. 10 years later, Jake has built some equity, but a large share of his payments went to interest, taxes, and repairs, not wealth. His house has appreciated modestly. On paper, he feels rich, but most of that value is trapped, illiquid, tied to one property in one city. Sarah's investment, compounding at typical long-term market averages, has often grown to a size that rivals, and in plenty of real-world cases, exceeds the equity Jake built, and her money is liquid and diversified. It's not one broken roof away from a $15,000 problem. This isn't a guarantee. Markets fluctuate, and so do housing markets. But once you run the actual numbers instead of trusting the folklore, buying is always a smarter investment. Stops being a fact and starts looking like an assumption. Here's the part that should feel urgent. Not deciding is still a decision. Sign a mortgage without running these numbers, or rent without ever investing the difference, and you've quietly chosen the worst of both paths. High cost, no growth. So does renting always win? No. And this is where most finance content stops, right before the part that actually matters to you. Buying a home can be one of the smartest moves of your life under the right conditions. It tends to make sense when you're staying put for at least 5 to 7 years. The upfront costs of buying take time to break even against renting, and moving after 2 years usually means losing money to fees alone. It makes sense when your monthly cost of owning is close to renting in your specific market, not the national average, your city, your neighborhood. It makes sense when you've saved 3 to 6 months of expenses separately from your down payment, so a broken water heater doesn't become an emergency. It makes sense when buying doesn't crowd out investing. If every spare dollar goes to the house and nothing goes to retirement accounts for a decade, the house is quietly costing you your future. And it makes sense when you actually want to stay. Roots and stability have real value even when they don't show up on a spreadsheet. Notice what's not on that list, because everyone does it, because your parents did it, or because renting feels like failure. Real quick, if the only reason on your list is, I don't want to feel behind, pause and ask yourself, behind who? Comparing your timeline to a stranger's highlight reel is how smart people make expensive 30-year decisions. So here's how you actually decide, not based on age or pressure, but on your numbers. Ask yourself 3 questions. 1. How long am I staying? In many markets, under 5 years tends to favor renting financially. Past 7, buying starts to make real sense. 2. What's the true monthly cost gap between renting and owning where I actually live? Once taxes, insurance, and maintenance are included, not just the advertised mortgage payment. 3. If I don't buy, will I actually invest the difference or will it quietly disappear into lifestyle creep? That third question is the one that matters most. The renting builds wealth too argument only holds if you actually invest the gap. Spend the difference on takeout and vacations, and you haven't outsmarted the system. You've just skipped the house and the wealth. The real dividing line isn't renting versus buying. It's discipline versus drift. A house doesn't make you wealthy. A mortgage doesn't make you wealthy. Even the stock market doesn't automatically make you wealthy. What makes you wealthy is deciding on purpose where your money goes every month for years without flinching. Buy when it fits your numbers and your life. Rent and invest when it doesn't. Either way, choose it because you ran the math, not because you were afraid of what people would think if you didn't. Most people never run these numbers. They follow the script they were handed and years later wonder why they don't feel as financially free as they expected to by now. You don't have to be one of them. Whichever path you take, your long-term wealth will be built or slowly undone by how well you understand how money actually grows. And that brings us to the piece we haven't covered yet. What actually happens to money once it's invested and how the stock market turns a monthly contribution into real wealth. That's exactly what the next video breaks down. Click it now and let's keep building.